Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Laurie, and I'm so excited to be starting a brand new mini-series. Everybody loved the DBT skills series so much that we decided to pivot for a bit and do a BPD symptoms series. So this is going to probably get juicy, which is great. And we're starting with a symptom. I mean, I guess they all kind of suck, but like this one like really sucks. So really excited to have our group back together, and we've added a new member of our group, so even more excited about that. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast of people with lived experience of borderline personality disorder and or emotion dysregulation challenges. These are all people in this mini-series that have been participants of the Super Feelers Club, which is a peer support group that's been running since 2021. Yeah, we're from all over the world, and we've been doing the DVD mini-series for almost a year, I think, like from the very beginning. And we're going to do this mini series. And then after this, we'll probably go back to some skills that we missed the first time around. So hopefully you stick around. Make sure you follow the show so that it stays on your feed. And let's get into the nitty gritties of the first diagnostic criteria: frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Woo, so stoked. Maybe just to start off, I'll just start with like the overview of borderline personality disorder if you're new to this. So it's a personality disorder in the DSM. There's a lot of controversy about the name borderline. We could get into that. There's also a Patreon bonus episode about the controversies of the names if you're interested in that. But there's 9 criteria, and you have to meet 5 of the 9 to be diagnosed. So I'll just read the DSM for you if you're just listening. A diagnostic pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and marked impulsivity, beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. So the first, frantic effort to avoid real or imagined abandonment, does not include suicidal or self-mutilating behavior. Number 2 is a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idolization and devaluation. I'm actually very stoked to talk about that because I'm having FP issues, favorite person issues recently. Identity disturbance, marked and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. Number 4, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. That's always going to be a fun episode to talk about. I'm like, part of me is like, oh, I wish we started with that, but no, I think we need to like get going. 5, recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures, threats, or self-mutilating behavior. Number 6, affective instability due to marked reactivity and mood, so intense happiness, sadness, anxiety lasting a few hours, rarely more than a few days. 7, chronic feelings of emptiness. 8, inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. And number 9, transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. You don't need to know what any of those words mean right now. There will be 9 episodes coming out every other week on this, so you're all good. We'll get into all the details. But before we do that, let's get started with introductions. And I do want to mention that Dave, who's been on our podcast a million times and is amazing. He's not at this recording, but he will be part of the series and various recordings. It's just a timing issue. So maybe let's start with Shannon. Do you want to introduce yourself? How long you've been diagnosed with BPD? What life looks like? Where you're from? All that jazz.
Yeah, so my name is Shannon. I live in Australia. It is 3 a.m. here. Thanks, guys.
I'm so sorry. I did not know that. You look great for 3 a.m. My goodness.
Just rolled out of bed. So I was diagnosed with BPD in 2020 at 40 years old. I had a lot of misdiagnoses prior to finding out that I had BPD. And when I was diagnosed, I really had no idea what it was. In saying that, what got me my diagnosis was a suicide attempt. And I'm just putting that out there now because it will play into a bit of what we talk about today. When I seen my psychiatrist, he told me I met all 9 of the criteria. I thought he was a dickhead. He did read the same list that you just read me, Laurie, and I was like, abandonment? Like, I'm the most independent person there is. This is not an issue for me. and it's going to take all of my effort to not completely take over the whole episode today. So,
okay, we've got time.
It's a doozy to start with, Laurie. Well done.
I blame the DSM. It's in that order. I just went with the order. But yes, when I looked at it again last night, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Awesome. Thanks so much, Shannon. How about Heather?
I'm Heather. I have a very similar story to Shannon. I was diagnosed last year at 37. So very wild ride up until then. I live in Georgia in the US and kind of dealt with the same stuff, dealing with a lot of other diagnoses of anxiety, depression, ADHD, PMDD, like the alphabet kind of, until landing on BPD last year after not a suicide attempt, but a major breakdown, which I will talk about also in this episode because it was, of course, about perceived abandonment. And yeah, this is probably one of the most tumultuous symptoms, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Heather. Shane, how about yourself?
Hey guys, so my name is Shane. My pronouns are he, him. I am located in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. So I'm new to this. Very excited, also a little nervous. But a little bit about my background. So I just turned 28. I was diagnosed with BPD at 25. I also have ADHD and CPTSD as part of my diagnoses. Potentially autism, but that's not ready to seek a diagnosis for that yet, and kind of just doing some more like education on my own and exploring that on my own. Yeah, before this, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, but it never really fit me. Shannon, I can relate to you. I've meet all 9 of the criteria at some point in time. Lastly, I would say I'm trans. I'm a trans man, which is like very important, I think, to like my experience, my background, right? And I'm currently kind of still on my recovery journey, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks so much, Shane. We're so happy to have you. And you've been in Super Feelers for what, like 3 years, maybe? The Super Feelers Club?
Yeah, a little bit. I think I took a break for a bit, but yeah, I've been on for about 3 years.
Awesome. Yeah, it's dropping. That's the whole point. You can take breaks when you need to. I'm the only one who can't take breaks. That's that's the problem. Awesome. Thanks so much, Shane. We're so stoked you're here. Kat.
I'm Kat. I'm from Scotland. The first diagnosis I got was autism when I was 30. And then I was diagnosed 3 years ago at 36. Complex PTSD, but under the ICD-11. So as EUPD, which is what BPD is in the ICD-11, plus PTSD. So yeah, that's my vibe. That was after also something related to perceived and actual abandonment. So yeah, that was a big crumbling time.
And you're in Scotland?
Yes.
Did you say that? Maybe I missed it. I don't know. My brain sometimes fries.
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. You're in Scotland twice. That's amazing.
Scotland.
Thanks so much, Kat. And yeah, you've been a member of the Super Feelers Club for a long time as well. I don't know how many years, but 3 or 4 probably, when the timing works out.
3, yeah. You were one of the first things I found. Yeah. Which was amazing. It was really
That's awesome.
Changing at the time.
We're so happy you're here. Thanks so much. And yeah, my name is Laurie, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm calling from the unceded traditional territory of the Matsui and Sumas First Nations, which is Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada, so far west coast. And I am the host of this podcast, and and the host of the Super Feelers Club. And always so grateful to be with all of you. You're just like make my whole world go around. I was actually, it's funny, my story's a bit different. I was diagnosed, I'm 31 now, and I was diagnosed with BPD at like 18 or 19. So like right away. Also following a breakup, which is almost always, I feel like, where a lot of these diagnoses start and comes together with the frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Not that getting a diagnosis was like an effort to avoid abandonment, but like, shit hits the fan and then you panic and whatever. I live with quite a bit of anxiety. Disordered eating challenges have been throughout my whole life, not diagnosed. And my counselor thinks that I have OCD, but I have not had a formal diagnosis of that because counselors can't diagnose in Canada. She is very convinced, but I don't have any diagnosis of that. So I just speak to like having some challenges with OCD related issues. So yeah, I've been diagnosed a long time, like 11 or 12 years now, and have been doing DBT, practicing DBT in my life basically that whole time since I was probably 20. So in terms of the diagnostic criteria, this one sucks. It sucks real hard. And also wanted to just, again, mention that Dave is not in this episode, but he'll be in future episodes. And he lives in Miami. He's been a member of the Super Feelers Club since the day it was born, I think. And he's just an awesome dude. So we're really excited that he is joining the series again as well. So, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Maybe no, I'm not even going to try and direct this. Who wants to start? Hit me with all you've got.
Well, honestly, I don't have much to say right now off the bat. This is, I would say, one of the symptoms that I haven't spent much time exploring, at least, like, not since the beginning, like, since I got diagnosed. So I'm interested to see what comes up for me, like, in hearing what everybody else has to share.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like same for me, like this isn't like a super prominent diagnosis symptom for me right now, but it has been. So we'll get there. Heather, I think you wanted to go next.
Where to start? The small things are like, well, first of all, let me start with when I knew this was our first episode, I asked my husband what he would answer as my like biggest, I don't know what word to use here, but how I represent this. And he instantly said aggression. So that sucks, but it's true.
Interesting.
I'm very quick to get aggressive and be like, no, I'm abandoning you. and I think that's what he means. Or like, the freak out when I perceive the abandonment, I just get like instantly hateful and defensive rather than like scared. It is scared, but that's not how it presents. But I think that the biggest thing for me that this affects is my parenting. I have this deeply rooted perceived abandonment from my child in the future because I'm no contact with both of my parents. And I really don't like them. And there's really no hope for a relationship. And so, like, my biggest fear in life is that my son's going to feel that way about me one day. So when he does normal child things, he's 11. When he just does normal things that he's annoyed by me because he's 11 or he is upset by something I've said or his feelings are hurt, I flipped a script so quickly. I feel like I'm instantly reacting to him as though he's abandoned me in the future. And so that's really been a huge struggle. Since the moment I knew I was pregnant with him, I have been kind of like wildly obsessing over how to make his life perfect, which is unrealistic. And every time I don't, that perceived abandonment is there. So this really affects like every day of my life.
That's fascinating, Heather.
It's crazy. It took me a long time to put together that that's like what was happening, but I've kind of put it all back down to my relationship with my own parents. And that huge, like, I don't feel accepted by my own mom. So it makes like, I don't believe that anyone else is going to fully accept me if she didn't, because she was supposed to, like that was her job. So it's like constantly, everyone's abandoning me all the time. And in my relationship, my husband had to draw some really strong boundaries. When we were still dating and first moved in together, I would pack my shit so fast if I thought he didn't like me. Like if we got in a big fight, I would be like, well, clearly he hates me and he's going to leave me. So like, actually, I'm leaving you. And it was horrible and toxic and it was really hurtful. And I never was actually moving out. Like I never left more than 24 hours. Usually I left for like 3 hours. And then I would calm down and realize that I've just like uprooted my whole life because I was worried that someone was going to do that to me. It's such a roller coaster. So that's really all I got right this moment, but it's very deeply rooted in me.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I don't think I've heard people talk about the parenting component before. Like, it's almost every example that I can come, I mean, obviously I'm not a parent, but like every example that I can come up with is like relationship focused, right? And I feel like your example makes so much sense. But yeah, that's so fascinating. Thanks, Heather. Shannon, go ahead.
So I hadn't really thought about it until Heather mentioned that. And I can see so many similarities. I also have an 11-year-old son, but I have two older children who are in their 20s and now live out of home. And I separated from their dad probably when they were 4 and 5. And so we were on our own for a while, and I really loved that. And this is where a lot of I loved being by myself. I had no intention of ever getting into another relationship. And I just thought it was going to be me and them for the rest of my life. And I was super, super happy with that. When I moved in with Scott and the kids had to go off to their dads, that was so hard for me. And this is before I knew I had BPD. And I hadn't thought about it in the context of abandonment. But I remember my parents saying to me a few times, there was some problematic stuff with their dad, and my parents were saying to me, why do you let them go? Why don't you just stop them from going? And I kept saying to them, I have to parent now for the future, because if I stop them from seeing him now, they're going to get to like 13, 14, 15, and they're going to think he's so cool because there's no rules and there's no expectations, and he's super cool and he buys us all the things. And Mum, you just, make rules and don't let us have sleepovers, and, you're the disciplinarian. And all the choices that I made at that time was based around that long-term goal. And I was like, oh, this is just smart from my end, right? I'm not parenting for now, I'm parenting for the future. But when Heather just said that, I was like, it was all about them abandoning me when they got older. And I just didn't know that that was a thing because I knew nothing about BPD then. But all of my decisions during that time were absolutely 100% based around them wanting to have a relationship with me into their adulthood. And my fear was that if I did anything to jeopardize their relationship with their dad, and they still have a good relationship with their dad, it's all worked out great, but that I would lose them and they would blame me, and that would be the end of our relationship. So protecting them when they were little from these heartbreaks or disappointments would have long term, and there was just no other option. Like in my head, I thought, if I don't do this, they are going to hate me when they're older, and they will move in with him and they will want nothing to do with me. And it wasn't until you just said that then, Heather, that I was like, oh, wow, me too. And I probably should speak to my therapist about that.
I mean, I feel like we're all going to come up with many things that we should speak to our therapist about during this series, which is good for their money, but bad for our wallets.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is going to sound really morbid, of course, but surprise. But it's like, okay, so a lot of people with BPD understand the rejection from your parents. A lot of us have that. And it's like, that is such a deep rooted thing that you can't not feel. So it's like when you have a child, it feels like the second chance of this person that's supposed to love you unconditionally. And now it's like I've spent all this years of like that. When it boils down to it, this is the reason I'm alive. This is the reason I'm still alive. And that's very morbid, but it's the truth. Having a child has kept me alive. And so if he rejects me too, like, it's game over. Like, what do I have left? Mm-hmm. So it's that, like, I think that's why it's so vital.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Heather. Shannon, I was going to ask, and you totally don't have to answer this question, but what's your relationship with your parents?
I have a great relationship with my mum and dad. They are brilliant, brilliant people. But I always felt like I was never enough. Like I let them down consistently. And that started pretty early because I was a kid with big emotions and my emotions didn't fit into the picture. Nobody understood them because none of us knew what BPD was. So I used to cry a lot when I was happy. And weddings are still a big thing for me. Like when I see all of these people really, really happy, it makes me so overwhelmed that I just cry and I don't know why. And I can't stop it. Like there's no controlling it. I remember being a kid and going to this wedding and I just cried and cried and cried. And everybody was so uncomfortable. And this is a real theme through my life where my emotions just made other people uncomfortable. And because my BPD is insular, so I don't have, like Heather was saying about, just packing your bags and going. For me, what that looks like is ruminating on where am I going to live? What am I going to do when this all goes to shit? How am I going to manage? How am I going to take care of the kids? And I will just ruminate on that over and over, and I'll look at rental properties and I try and have these, it's like a cope ahead crisis plan for imaginary crap. Yes. So these big emotions were present. And so while my relationship with my parents was good, nobody understood me and there was no validation for any of that because it just made everybody feel so uncomfortable. So I can now look at my relationship with my parents and go, oh man, that must have been hard for you. But because my BPD is insular, like it happens internally. There's no big outburst. I'm just ridiculously cruel to myself. I think that's why the abandonment thing didn't fit initially for me. And I was like, this just isn't a thing for me. Like, I'm not worried about going out and living on my own. If my relationship doesn't work out, I'll be totally fine. I loved it. I loved being by myself. But while that's what's happening on the outside, inside, you're not worth it. You're a bad person. This house of cards is going to come crashing down around you and people are going to see who you really are. And that is, it all happens inside. So when those big emotions come out, and it's either anger or sadness is generally where it pours out of me instead of it just sitting in the gross little dungeon that exists inside of me, then people don't know what to do with it because it doesn't happen a lot. And that just leaves me feeling like I don't fit and I can't control my emotions in the same way other people can. And yeah, so I can't, mum and dad absolutely did their best but they had no idea what was going on for me. And because I had no idea what was going on for me.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And I think I truly, with probably a few small exceptions, I truly do think parents are doing the best they can. It's often
there was
not
a lot
enough.
there was a lot of shame for me. And I think when Heather was saying about changing that for your kids, that's the thing that I tried to change. I didn't need to be a cycle breaker. There was no abuse in my immediate family, great parents, all of that kind of stuff. But the shame that I carried and feeling like if mum or dad knew even the slightest bit of what was going on in here, that they would just hate me. And so I've made shame a really safe thing with my kids because I never wanted them to experience that same feeling like I can't come to you with this really big thing because it will change how you feel about me.
Totally. And what's interesting is, I often wonder if my abandonment, seeming abandonment, like emotional abandonment from my mom is real or imagined. And I think that's where we start. I always have challenges questioning my reality. And I would say most people around me think that it is real. But then every once in a while I go, oh my God, did I just make this up? And then I kind of fall into an interesting cycle of self-doubt, which never ends.
I just want to say that that's really relatable, Laurie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Like we've just been taught that our reality isn't the reality. So how do we like believe ourselves and our own narrative?
I've relied, I would say, on like good social support, particularly like in high school. I had this my best friend in high school, Alex. She would always check me. Like I would go to her and be like, oh my God, can you believe this? My mom did this. And I would just laugh it off like it was just like nothing, right? And she would be like, no, Shane, that's actually crazy.
Totally. Yeah. And it's so funny. I had a really good friend in elementary school. His mom was my piano teacher. Very young, very young. We got back together as friends in late university. So there was probably like a 15-year gap of like us hanging out. And he had this observation where he just said, yeah, I don't know what was going on at home for you, but every time I went there, there was such a strange energy that it made me really uncomfortable. 15, 20 years later, he had this realization. Or he expressed this realization. And I went, holy shit, you were like 7 and you could tell that something was off. Unbelievable. I want to add to Shannon and Heather, or not add, but I'm a intentionally child-free person. I protect my alone time and my quiet in a big way. And I have a lot of fear about bringing another person into the world. And what I love about what you're both saying is you are not taking your children's... I realize that maybe this is like a pathological problem that we're talking about, imagined abandonment, whatever. But you're not taking your children loving you into the future as a guarantee. And as a 31-year-old intentionally childless person, almost always what I'm told, other than the like, oh, you'll change your mind one day, which is the first thing they always say. And I'm like, no, if I do, great, or if I do, fine, but like, don't tell me that. And the next thing inevitably that is said is, who's going to take care of you when you're old? As though children owe lifelong love and responsibility to their parents who may or may not have given them that when they were growing up. And I have a friend that has worked in long-term care for a long time. And she's like, you'd be surprised at how few people take care of their parents when they're old. And the assumption that your kids are going to love you forever unconditionally when you aren't trying is the problem. So you two trying actively, whether or not it's for like maybe diagnostic criteria reasons, I think is like a positive for them in the long run, because you're putting in the effort that a lot of people just assume should be a given because I brought you into this world, so you owe me everything. Heather.
This is kind of a hard truth, but I basically had a child because of perceived abandonment. like my whole life's coming together about this as we're all talking. It's like I married my high school sweetheart, and he cheated on me. Sorry to say this on a podcast, bro, but he did. And we got back together, and I was very young, and I thought that like starting a family would make him not leave me. So literally what made me remember that is that I was always a purposefully no child person. I had my son when I was 26. And I didn't want kids because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't feel like I could handle it, but abandonment was enough to like forget all of that and be like, okay, well, this thing might help me not get abandoned. And I'm divorced from that person. It didn't work. I left that person. So that it's just wild, the things it'll make you do. And I love my son. I don't mean that in any kind of way. Like I got pregnant with him on purpose, but it was for wild reasons.
100%. And I remember when I was like, before I was diagnosed, having such fear about being broken up with by my boyfriend at the time and going like, we should have a kid. And it was literally so that you can't leave me. And newsflash, they can still fucking leave you. And then now you have a child. And it's, I think that that's like a pretty common feeling. I mean, I know a lot of people who have had babies to save their relationship. That is horrifying for so many reasons, but it happens a lot. And I don't think it helps save your relationship. Being more tired, more grumpy, and more broke is not going to help your relationship. But anyways, maybe let's go to Kat. I'm curious what your experience with the symptom is.
I guess I had a lot of kind of various forms of abandonment and abuse and grooming kind of situations in my childhood. So there was a lot of things which were very conditional, which I think set up a lot of the feelings around, if I am not everything that you want, then I am not good enough. And that sense of the goalposts always moving, but having to meet them anyway. And if I look back, I can see how that's kind of affected a lot of decisions that I've made. I had an abusive relationship for 10 years, and I only left because my therapist at the time told me it was going to kill me, because either I would or they would. It just wasn't even on the table to break all of the promises that I'd made to that person. Because I was like, I promised I would stay. I promised I would stay alive. And that is the only option. Like, I have to just fold up everything I've ever wanted, everything I've dreamed of, all of the things that I enjoy doing, and put them in a box and just never do them again. And it is wild to, like, now have a life that I do enjoy and that I do want, and be building, a life worth living, just to be cheesy about it. But yeah, and I can see how that's kind of played through. And then going forward to diagnosis, so I left that relationship, and then there was lockdown, and then I had a job in a place where it was very much a small team. We all lived on site. It was very found family vibes, and then it all fell apart because, and a lot of the, I don't know, excuse, I guess, like a lot of the weight of what that was about got quoted as, "You are so effing borderline." I was staying with a friend, and they were sort of telling me, like, you can't go back, like, you can't stay after what they've said and what they've done. And I was just like, well, yeah, but I don't want to lose this. And they were like, well, you've already lost it. Like, they've broken it. And now you need to, like, build something out of the ashes. And again, it took me a long time to get around to that even being on the table.
Yeah, totally. Because our connection to people is so important to our self identity, or like purpose for some reason. Like, we are so connected on like such a deep level that it becomes so scary to think about it going away.
It's almost like it's like,
does that resonate?
Yeah, definitely. Because so one of my mother moved away for like quite a big portion of my childhood, and that sort of started me looking for other, and like I remember being aware that I was looking for mother figures from like 10. And then like some of those, I look back and they were like 100% FPs. Like, if I saw that person even for like 30 seconds on that day, I was okay. But if I didn't, I was not okay. And yeah, just that sense of your worth being related to just someone else existing is terrifying, but also it got me here. Like, I wouldn't be here without those people. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to add FP is favorite person, which we'll talk a lot more about in probably the unstable relationships episode. But I just wanted to, for the sake of acronym, for people that are listening, because I used to be very confused about FPs, and now I am very much not confused because I have one, and it's horrifying. Yeah, maybe I'll go, because I feel like this has been a tough one for me in the past. And it remains a tough one in a very like kind of superficial way, in that like I'm happily married and my husband's really supportive. But I have a very hard time not being like, do you love me? Are you sure you love me? Are you going to leave me? Are you going to break up with me? You're not going to break up with me, right? Are you not going to die? You're not going to die, right? And having to ask that over and over and over and over and over again. Again, that's where part of my counselor's like, girl, you have OCD. But that is kind of what it looks like now, which is more just like annoying rather than frantic or like destructive. But if we like go back to when I was 18 or so, before I was diagnosed, shit was not good. So, I mean, same boyfriend so he was long distance for a bit. He did live here. He went to school elsewhere. So, we had been together for a bit in person. Not only did I, at times be like, oh, we should have a baby so that he would not leave me, which it was a really not healthy relationship. So that I'm very glad that did not happen. Thank God we were long distance for most of it. When he finally broke up with me, I like lost my fucking mind. And one thing that I've realized about people breaking up with me is that they almost always just ghost. And I think that is because this is a lot of like thinking through this for 10 years. I think they just disappear because I will do anything to keep them. And they know that they cannot break up with me if they don't just disappear. And that is really sad. So I had been with this long distance guy for like a year and a bit, maybe 2 years, which when you're 18, that's a long time. I was like really connected with his family. My family loved him. They still do. And I remember I was in Whistler for a girls' weekend, and he just stopped messaging me. And we were the kind of like long distance relationship where you were on Skype like 24 hours a day kind of situation. Like, it was not healthy. And he just stopped messaging me. And so I panicked, obviously. And he also had a lot of mental health issues. So I was also worried about what that was on his end. And I just lost it. And I messaged his parents and was like, hey, this person's not messaging me. Like, what's going on? And they're like, we talked to him and he's done. He thinks this is the best decision for him. And I was just like, how the fuck could you possibly do this to me? Like, you just disappeared. Like, you just nothing, just like out of nowhere. And I wanted to kill everyone. So I, at the time, had a lot of challenges with anger and violence. And I decided that I was going to kill him and everybody else. And I went, he wasn't home yet, but I knew when he was coming home for some reason, because I think I had access to his email or something. Again, never do that. So I knew when he was coming home, and I was like, I'm going to go to the airport and I'm going to murder him. And I was so distraught. And I remember going to the hospital for some reason. I think my parents brought me in or something because they were like, this is not good. And I was like, yeah, I'm here because I'm going to murder my ex-boyfriend. And the cops were like, because they were cops there at the time, they were like, okay, how are we going to do it? I was like, I'm going to shoot him. And they're like, do you own a gun? And I was like, no. They're like, do you have access to a gun? No. Okay, so what's your plan then? And I was like, I don't know, but he's coming in on like December 7th or whatever. And I know that I'm going to be there. I'm going to do this. And that's actually when I think my first My first time being given Seroquel, because I was staying up all night thinking about this, ruminating on it constantly. And I mean, this is the most frantic. I mean, killing someone is a pretty frantic effort to avoid abandonment. Doesn't make any logical sense because then they don't exist. But anyways, was first given Seroquel that night just to help me sleep enough to not ruminate on it all night, and then was referred to the people that eventually diagnosed me with BPD. So that was kind of the kind of turning point of, I am not going to be abandoned to the point where I'm going to kill someone. To the point, not just oh, I'm going to kill someone, haha. No. I was determined that this was going to happen, which is super scary. Obviously not a good way of doing anything. So didn't kill him, obviously, because I'm not in jail. And I've actually, 7 years later or something, went out for coffee with him. And it was kind of okay. We don't have a relationship in any sense of the word, and we don't need one. It's fine. But that was kind of the first noticeable time where I was trying to really react to this. Then I got into a second relationship that was a very messed up relationship of we were kind of sleeping together for 2.5 years, but we were on and off, cheating on each other, not really in a relationship, still loved each other. We're kind of addicted to each other. That seems to be being addicted to people, and having people addicted to me seems like a very common thing in my life of the intensity is so strong that they've never felt that way before. And so they become addicted to it in some ways. We broke up all the time because we were having a horrible relationship. And I did the fucking shit that I wish I hadn't, sent a Snapchat of me with a razor blade right before disappearing for 2 days, intentionally trying to make him think that I killed myself so that he would talk to me again. The stupid, embarrassing things that BPD, when it was not well treated and I was not well, made me do to try and avoid abandonment. And it worked like a charm. He messaged, I disappeared off Snapchat for 4 days, made sure that, because I think at the time you could see when when they had sent something. So I made sure I didn't send anything. I made sure I didn't post on anything. But he thought I was dead. All, intentionally just trying to make him connect with me again. This went on for, again, 2.5 years of just back and forth bullshit. And finally, one day he was going to pick me up so that I could come to his house and sleep with him. I got all ready. I didn't have a car at the time, so he was picking me up, and got all ready and was waiting for him to pick me up for 4 hours. Nothing. And I finally just was I called him and was what the fuck? What are you doing? Where are you? And he's I changed my mind. I'm not coming. And I was I've shaved and I've, whatever, all this shit. I'm all ready for you to come and pick me up. And he was no, I'm not coming. And I was are you breaking up with me? And he's yeah, we're done. And this was over the phone. And I was well, I still have stuff at your house. Again, if I see you one more time, I know full well that I can get you back, because I know you're as addicted to me as I'm addicted to you. And so I said, well, I still have stuff at your house. I need to come over and pick it up. And he's I'll drop it off. I said, okay, cool. And I'm okay, no worries. He's going to drop it off. So when he drops it off, I'm going to give him a hug, give him a kiss, have sex with him, and he's going to come back. It's fine. This is just one of the patterns of whatever. And so I say, okay, what day are you going to drop it off? He tells me, and I go, cool. And I'm waiting. I'm all ready. I'm, hot. I'm shaved. I'm ready to go. And I wait. And I get a text saying, okay, the stuff's in your carport. And I literally, even just thinking about this was so long ago. And I can see you guys breathing of going because I didn't have the opportunity to win him back. Even because I knew, I knew, and I think he knew that, and I think both of them, both examples, knew that if they saw me one more time, it wouldn't have ended. And that breaks my heart because I still to this day have not seen that man. And it's been like 8 or 9 years. And I still think about him. And it was a horrible relationship. I don't think about him in like what could have been. Like, no, it was awful. Like, it was not a good situation. But I'm like, I wish I had that one more chance to try and like prove that he shouldn't leave me. Those are my main examples of this, I think. But then you also get this, or at least I get this fear that, okay, so if that's how people break up with me, what's stopping Aaron, my husband, from just leaving in the middle of the night? And so I'm always, again, do you love me? Are you sure you're not going to leave me, right? Do you want to break up with me? Are we getting divorced? Well, first of all, if he was going to divorce me and leave me in the middle of the night, he probably wouldn't answer the question. He would just say, yeah, for sure. But those are yeah. Though I almost also gave up a job for a guy because I didn't want to leave my job for a better job because I wasn't sure if me leaving would make him not talk to me anymore. And I could have like fucked my career over it. Again, like that doesn't sound as frantic perhaps as like the classic what you picture as frantic, but that's a pretty frantic decision when you could destroy your career over a dude who doesn't love you. So anyways, that's my frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Shane, I'm wondering where this lands for you.
So much to say. But I'll go with Laurie. You know, your stories and what you were just describing kind of reminds me of my most recent breakup. I realized I think a lot of my frantic efforts, like you all, kind of stem from breakups and romantic relationships. So an example for me would be this recent breakup. So in January, my ex at the time, so she broke up with me just because she was under a lot of stress. We were only dating for about 6 months. And she just was a very busy person and basically came to me and was like, I feel like I can't give you what you're giving me. Which I was like, well, duh, silly. Like, I know how busy you are. Like, relationships aren't about giving, I think, 50-50, like 100% of the time. I think it's about 50-50 commitment 100% of the time, right? But she was young. She's young. She's just turned 22. But anyways, yeah, so she broke up with me for that reason. And it's crazy because I was like, okay, I'm going to handle this really well. I'm going to handle this better than any other time that I've done before. I was like, I'm going to need some space after this, like for no contact. Like, I do want us to have a friendship in the future, maybe even try this again. But like, clearly just now is not kind of the time. But I was like, I'm going to need some space. I asked for the space, but never gave her the space. So I would just send like a text, like it was like a text like once a week for about 4 weeks. Not frantic or like, nuclear on like a nuclear level of when it comes to like frantic efforts, right? Still something though I'm not proud of and something that I thought I had overcome with my last breakup, which my breakup before then was the one that really left me heartbroken. That was with my soulmate, and talk about frantic efforts there. I mean, I was delivering flowers at his door trying to just win them back because I know I messed up, and I messed up really bad. I hurt their feelings a lot, and I went off the deep end, I think, after that one. Once that door finally closed, and it's funny because Kat, the thing that you said, having like these conversations like with your support system and talking like you haven't lost them yet, but then them giving you the reality of like, what are you talking about? The door's already closed. That was so relatable, and that hit me. And like after that door closed, just rampant self-destruction, rampant self-destructive behavior, whether it was substance abuse, it was unhealthy sex, just taking really bad care of myself, still somehow maintaining a full-time job, doing all of that. Yeah, that's kind of where all of this, I think, really like lands for me. Those are some of my examples, I'd say. I also wanted to note, though, some of the work I've been doing with my therapist and like a lot of the things that you all have said, that, you know, these frantic efforts come from a state of fear, right? And so my therapist and I are working on all these like different parts and pieces in my brain of like how I act and why I act the way I do, like in these different circumstances, right? And so I feel like my protector comes up a lot when it comes to trying to avoid these like feelings of abandonment. Whether my protector is lashing out or whether my protector is packing up my shit and leaving before they get the opportunity, you know, it's looked so different in so many different ways. I don't know if anybody else has anything to speak on that.
Shane, you brought up such a good point about packing up all my shit so that I can leave before them. And I think we haven't even mentioned the words, "I hate you, don't leave me," which is kind of a tagline of BPD. And I think really what that looks like. Do you resonate with that kind of tagline?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, so I'm thinking of a song and I'm trying to, the lyrics will come to me, but like the "I hate you, don't leave you. I hate you, don't leave me," or like "fuck you, come back." Like,
yeah,
that's another one that kind of works for me in that same. Yeah. So that definitely resonates.
and I think that is in itself a frantic effort to avoid abandonment, in that we're trying to abandon first so that we have the power in that situation.
Control.
Not in like not in like a manipulation way, but in a protect our own emotional state by being able to say, that was my decision.
Or I was kind of thinking like, I'm having such huge emotions in the moment. They feel so out of control. This is like my go-to that I can, this is my one thing that I know that I can't control and keep myself safe, right? So, yeah.
Totally. And it never works, but
Yeah, I was going to add to this, talking about that "I hate you, don't leave me." I've had two suicide attempts, one when I was 18, one when I was 40. Both, the first one was at breakdown of my first serious relationship. And I was listening to you, Laurie, talk about that I'm going to murder him, you know, like, and my feeling was the exact opposite. I want to kill myself. I can't. And when that relationship broke down, and it was me who ended it, but I think it was because I could see it was coming to a close. And I remember my auntie saying to me, "If you cry more than you smile, it needs to be done." But and it was a very calm, rational decision. This guy, he was a beautiful, beautiful guy. And it wasn't a toxic relationship. It was a really
was this the dad
lovely,
of your kid?
No,
Okay,
this was before, like, end of high school relationship, first serious relationship. And he was so lovely, and it wasn't toxic at all. He was a really, really beautiful boy. But he had some strong, his mum was the problem in our relationship. She was jealous of us, and he wasn't strong enough to stand up to her. And it really played, like, put a whole heap of problems there. And honestly, it probably wouldn't have worked out. We were kids, but it was big and it was sad for both of us. But in my head, when I broke that relationship off, I thought that would be the thing that would make him fight for me. I believed enough in us that he would go, "Oh, no, this isn't what I want. I want you." And that's what I needed. I just needed that thing from him for him to go, no, this, you know, I get that this is a thing, and I always put her first because he had to. She was hard to live with. But he didn't do that. And So then I went into a similar thing that Shane mentioned, impulsive behavior, excessive drinking, unhealthy sexual relationships. And I was so ashamed of myself. But the whole time I kept thinking, this is going to be fine. It's going to work out. We're going to get back together. Not thinking once that everybody knew what I was doing. And like we're a small town, you know, whole heap of stuff going on. And everybody knew. So he obviously knew as well. But that just didn't compute to me. Like we were going to get back together. And we were at a pub one night and he came in. I was like, this is my chance. This is the first time. You know, I'd been to a couple of things where I thought he might be there and he wasn't. And he turned up at the pub this night and I was like, this is great. He's here. This is the thing. And he was with a group of our friends and he walked up to me and he put his hand out and he said, oh, hi, my name's, and I won't say his name, my name's, and it's really nice to meet you. I attempted suicide that night.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I knew that it was just a play. Like I knew it was just he was uncomfortable and he didn't know what to do and it was a big joke in front of our friends. And we have since met again and have talked this through, and he was hurting just as much as I was. And he apologized for doing that. And that was a really lovely thing. That we got to have that conversation again. But I carried that with me. But so I had the suicide attempt, but I didn't tell anyone when I wasn't successful. I didn't tell anyone. I mean, I couldn't do anything for days afterwards, but it just went, I was so ashamed that I couldn't even do that properly, you know. And then I just looked for attention in all of the wrong places, and it's how I ended up in my marriage and with an unhealthy thing. So the breakdown of that relationship was actually really fine for me, even though it was a long-term relationship. But with my most recent attempt, there was so much going on and I didn't realize at the time, but everything was related around abandonment. There was some big stuff going on with my eldest son, who was at that 17, 18-year-old, had a license. The kids were all going out doing things. I'm, you know, the person who's getting in his way of doing that, and Scott as well. And he and Scott had always had a really great relationship, but we got to that point where Dad was cool and you're not my dad, because Dad lets me do stuff and you guys don't. And our greatest fear played out for that group of boys when, like my son and his friends, when they lost one of their mates in a car accident. And that was what we were trying to avoid, was him being that person. But there was so much animosity at that time, and I went into that spiral because I'm like, well, if Jack and Scott can't get along, how do I do this? How do I have to choose my son because he's my son. And I could feel the imagined resentment when we're talking about real or imagined. I want to be really clear about that. Imagined resentment. Because in my head, Scott's thinking, well, I wouldn't have to deal with all of this if you weren't here with your children. And he had been the best dad to those kids, like best dad, and healed all of the parts that he didn't break. And so there was this big thing going on with them. And so I was already in that process of going into that rumination, thinking, you know, I'm going to have to get a house. We're going to have to live somewhere else. And then maybe if I take the kids away, then we can focus on our relationship. But I was just slowly going downhill. Then we had a big issue with our youngest son, who had experienced some really significant trauma. And we were going through the whole process of the legal side of that, and it all run into each other. I experienced a situation that was really not okay. There was it was with some friends, long-term friends of ours, who put me in a really unsafe position. And so I had that there in the background as well. And then it all accumulated in me having a conversation with my girlfriends and saying, maybe I just deserve all of this. Maybe I'm just a really bad person. And that was the first time I had spoke that out into the world. And I came home from that thing, and the people who we were dealing with that were working with us with my younger son were coming the next day. And so I'd kind of been out, and there was all of this big crisis stuff happening, and I'd been out and just ignored that for 2 nights with my girlfriends, and it was to celebrate for one of my other friends. So I'd just gone and done that and ignored all of the other things, and I walked home back into it. And for the first time, I had the realization that these people were coming to maybe judge us. Like it wasn't like the Department of Community Services, but it was something to do with looking at my son in his home environment, and it had to do with his therapy and stuff. But in my head, it became oh God, they're going to judge us. Like maybe they might take him away. And so it was like the perfect storm. Kids stuff, partner stuff. Maybe they're going to take my son away. And that spiral, like it happened so fast. It happened so fast. And it was just that the opportunity came and bam. But the long way of getting to this part, which I wanted to say about I hate you, don't leave me. After that suicide attempt, and I was in hospital, and some of this stuff came out about what had been happening in the background. And Scott came to the hospital, and I was like, how can he still love me after I've done this, And I said to him, just go. This is your out. I'm giving you out. You're out. Just go. And he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, I could just tell them not to let you in here because they'll stop you from coming. And I used that power. Like I knew that they would do that. I didn't want our relationship to end. I loved him, and I love him now more than any person I've ever met in my entire life. And so he almost lost me. And then I told him that I was going to have him locked out of the hospital so he couldn't see me. And that was all in an attempt to get him to walk away. And now I feel so guilty about that because he gave no indication that he was going to abandon me even after doing what I'd done. And it's the one time I feel like I have manipulated someone because I needed him to say, I'm going to stay. And by putting him in that position where I tried to force him to leave, and he didn't, and he said no, I got exactly what I wanted, which was the confirmation that he was still in this. And it is the darkest thing, and it's the thing that keeps me up at night because it's that time that I feel like I took this really important thing and used it in a way that I'm really ashamed of. And I mean, he's okay and he gets it. He understands it. But I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to forgive myself for doing that.
I hope you will over time, but it's our brains do wild things when they're so, I don't know, like frantic, I guess is the word I'm going to use because it's the word in the criteria, but I don't think that it's within our control. And you brought up manipulation, Shannon. And I wonder, Manipulation is not in the diagnostic criteria. I would like to point that out. It is a stigmatizing way of describing people with borderline because they think that our frantic efforts or our self-harm or our inappropriate anger is a way to get what we want or whatever. My view is that it's not to get what we want, it's to get what we need. I'm curious what others feel about the concept of manipulation in living with BPD.
The line, I hate you, don't leave me, like for me it's always been I hate me. Like I hate me, don't leave me. And I didn't think this one fit for me until it was a psychologist who said, like, do you split on other people? And I was like, no. And then she goes, well, do you split on yourself? And I was like, what is that thing? Like, yes, 100%, like all the time. Because it's like, I am the worst person alive. I do not deserve to be here. Like, this is terrible. And that has led to a lot of the frantic things that I have done, or can bend over backwards for what someone else wants, I will. But occasionally, like, I just need to know that I'm not awful enough that that will show on the surface.
Thanks, Kat. That's so well said. Anybody else on the manipulation front?
I was just going to say, I think Kat made a good point as far as like splitting is definitely a frantic effort for me to avoid abandonment, because it's the same as like the packing my shit first and leaving first. It's like, if I can convince myself that you're no good in the first place, and I hate you anyways, it doesn't bother me as bad, even though it's all fake. It's a complete wall. But you split to convince yourself that you don't need them anyways.
Totally. Shane, how about you?
I mean, I haven't been called out, I would say, as manipulative. I do worry a lot about my behavior as being seen as manipulative, which is why I really try to emphasize like really strong communication, in my relationships. Like I really value really strong communication, just open, honest communication. I do a lot of check-ins, Laurie, like you do with your husband. Yeah. A lot of check-ins. But I think I hate the stigma. I mean, I hate the stigma. I hate that people with BPD get called out for being manipulative, because it really isn't. It's we don't do it because we are trying to get something out of you. We're desperately trying to fill a void, a need, a lack of something. And I just wish people would take that more seriously.
Me too. Thanks, Shane. Shannon?
To add to what Shane just said, and in response to that part of my story, I can 100%, like I put the manipulation label on there. I didn't pre-plan that. I didn't think about it before that moment. So if we were going to define manipulation, and I think this goes for all of us, where there's those, frantic text threads, we're not sitting back going, what can I do here that's going to worm my way in and make this different for the other person? It was something that I said in the most distressed state I have ever been in. And yet it's the thing I beat myself up most about. So if it was manipulation as the definition of manipulation, I wouldn't care about it. I wouldn't think about it again. I wouldn't feel shame around it because I did it on purpose. It certainly wasn't that. And so I just want to be careful that I'm not adding to the stigma myself, because that's the last thing I want to do. And if I wasn't somebody who was so cruel to myself continually, then I likely wouldn't give it a second thought. But that's just not who I am. I don't think it's who any of us are. And that's the flip side to this coin. You know, you're dealing with these really distressing situations and intense emotions, and then we're here trying to figure it out the best we can so we can do it better and use skills, and then we just beat ourselves up about it regardless of how hard we try. It's really the wrong way to treat the best kind of people.
And go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I just kind of had this thought, and Shannon, hearing you talk, like, you know, if we're really talking about true manipulation, I feel like we're talking about you got to look at other personality disorders. Like BPD is not the one for manipulation tactics. But I feel like
but yet we're told we are all the time.
Right.
And in some ways I get it, because some of the stuff I described earlier, right? Like, that shit's manipulative, but not manipulative because I'm trying to be manipulative. It's desperation.
I mean, you went in with no plan. Like,
yeah, totally. I certainly went in with no plan. I am gonna kill you. Do you have a gun? No. Do you what are you gonna? Where are you gonna get a gun? Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's such a distressing not symptom. It's not a symptom. It's not in the DSM. It's such a distressing stigma that is put on us. And I think for me, and what I'm hearing from others, is it's put on us so hard that then it becomes part of what we question in our own selves is, am I being manipulative? Because I've been told that I'm being manipulative so many times that I have to start questioning my own intention. And that is a really shit way of having to live your life.
Yeah, let's just add another layer to the disconnecting from reality, right? Like,
totally. Yeah, it's so hard.
It's even more insidious than that. Like, I remember being just upset as a child and being like, given to my other parent because I was intentionally trying to upset people. Yeah, without the word, it's even already that pressure of, what you're doing affects other people in a bad way and you shouldn't be doing it.
Crying at a wedding?
Yeah.
Crying at a wedding and being told that
are you trying to be
just want the attention on you? Are you trying to, like, why are you making this so difficult for everybody else? It's just that messaging starts when you're so young, and is it any wonder that we question this shit continuously?
Absolutely. Okay, so we are out of time, but I really quickly, because I want to end on like tangible what we do to try and avoid this. What are some skills that you use? And maybe there's none because I haven't prepped any answer to this question and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to say? What are some skills that you use when it comes to trying to manage these frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment?
I kind of consciously, so for a start, I don't do relationships. That's my first, probably biggest thing, is like I don't, like, I have special people, but in terms of a traditional relationship, it's just off the table, because I don't feel safe in that, and I'm not going to put myself in that position. And then just affirmations, like aggressive affirmations, very religiously practicing affirmations that remind me that I'm worthy. So, some weird realizations, like at one point I was having porridge and I spontaneously just said, I am worth my time, and then sobbed for an hour. Like, it's just been really helpful. And that's been with the backdrop of people who, I also have a list of who I matter to and why, which I made in my better times, and like some people have contributed to that. So I have that's part of my crisis kit.
That's awesome. I love that idea. And to have that in your crisis kit is just like, yeah, so important. I love that.
Honestly, just going to therapy is still the only skill I'm using, because this is just something that I struggle with every day, and I'm constantly working on it, and I don't really, like, I haven't figured out the exact skills to pull out of the toolbox yet that really, like, prevents it. I have things that I do afterwards, like checking the facts and making cope ahead plans and things like that, but in the moment I've not really found much to prevent it, unfortunately.
Mhm.
It's like a forever work in progress.
As with all skills, realistically, these are personality disorders that are more like, there's a reason that these aren't like time limited disorders, right? Is we're going to be working on this stuff for a very long time. And that is what it is. Here we are. Shane, how about you?
I think I mentioned this earlier, strong communication. So doing kind of like those check-ins as part of, I guess, my cope ahead, or a way to like just reassure myself. But I know that those kind of constant check-ins can get overwhelming for people. So I have to be mindful of that. And so I think that's where, like, Kat, I really love that you said aggressive affirmations. Like, the affirmations that I have to do to avoid, these frantic effort to combat, I'm going to actually say these frantic efforts, right? It's aggressive affirmations. And I guess when I'm in the moment, like, let's say, like, for this last breakup I went through, sometimes I don't have the brain space to do those aggressive affirmations. So I have to do some quick kind of distracting technique or some other way to regulate my system until I can bring myself back down to like a logical brain space, right? And so then I can enact those aggressive affirmations. I say this like it's so easy. It's really not. It's so difficult. And I'm not perfect when I practice it. And I think it's important to also include like grace, give yourself a lot of grace in this moment, because Laurie, like you said, it's constant work. We're going to be doing this work for a long time. So all of that's important.
Shannon, how about you?
I've never successfully skilled my way out of this yet. So I'm going to reserve my response for a time that I do. I can wise mind it and check the facts. I'm generally very aware of when I'm out of wise mind. I probably can't see it in the exact moment, but it comes around pretty quick. Like, I can kind of go, oh, hang on, this isn't, these decisions aren't coming from a rational place. But yeah, in those moments of, intense distress, I haven't done it well yet. So I'll reserve my gold star for another day.
No, you get a gold star for honesty in your response, because we don't always have the answers to these things.
No. And it's not something that happens a lot for me. Like, it's been a couple of really big events. And so it's not something that I'm dealing with every day. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have an amazing partner who's super supportive and very invested in my well-being. I will say that since my diagnosis, we have probably made a commitment that we're not mind readers. We need to be honest with each other about what we need, and we do that very, very well. So it's not something that happens in our relationship a lot. Like, we're pretty chilled. There's not a lot of drama. There's not a lot of arguments. We're very aligned with our values and goals and that kind of stuff. So that is the difference. I think with my previous marriage, like, we were completely different people. So for me, having BPD, having a really healthy relationship with great communication, like Shane was saying, it's just a game changer to my mental health and my own well-being, to feel confident that I am a priority. And I feel that way all the time. It's not something I have to ever ask him. I feel consistently like me and the kids are always his first priority. So that probably makes this a little bit easier to manage in my everyday life. But next time I do get super unokay with it and I pull out a skill, I'll check back in with you guys and you can give me a
I love it. Sounds good. No, I think for me, kind of like Shannon, this is not a thing that I'm great with my skills on. Because when I was like going through the worst parts of this, I didn't have the skills or they weren't as well ingrained. And now I'm just not good at it. Let's not even pretend that it's like anything but just not being good at these ones. I think like, textbook wise, I would say like, yes, wise mind is probably the one that I would use the most, but like not well. And sometimes I can know what wise mind is saying and still do the opposite. And I think these would be some of those situations. The interesting skill, and it's not really a skill, but more like a homework from therapy that I had around the reassurance seeking part, where it's like, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Asking 100,000 times, is she had described to me that is kind of part of, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but like an OCD like cycle where you're anxious and then you do the compulsion, which in my case is the asking if you love me. And then that makes you feel temporarily better so that when your anxiety comes back, you know that that's going to make you temporarily feel better, but it kind of becomes hyper fixated on that. And so one of the exercises that I had to do on this reassurance seeking piece, and it did help over time, it sucked for a long time, was basically Erin had a rule. She worked with us to set a rule where if I said, do you love me? He didn't answer. Or are you going to leave me? He didn't answer. Heather, you look like, yeah, for a long time. Like, and he still kind of does this. So it was, do you love me? And it would either be no response at all, or you already know the answer to that. Over and over and over and over again. And to be fair, as much as that super, super sucked, it did help because I was able to kind of at least slow that cycle of reassurance seeking. I still ask too often, but it's not like, I mean, I think I was probably like 50, 60 times a day out, like in the bad, like it was a lot. So now it's like 4 times a day, 5 times a day, which is better. Still probably super annoying. But that was a very helpful exercise. And it wasn't him saying, no, I don't love you as the exposure, because that's not helpful. But it was just, you already know the answer to that, or silence. And it helped. Okay, well, we talked for a long time about this, which it does not surprise me at all. This has been so much fun. I'm like literally so stoked for the rest of these criteria. I believe next we're doing a pattern of unstable, intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idolization and devaluation. Woo! So fun. So I will see you all. The next episode will come out in 2 weeks, and we will have, I'm sure, just as much to talk about on that front. So thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Superfeeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Superfeelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, and you get bonus content, extra resources, and extra connection to me throughout. That can be found on patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again, and have a great day.